New Orleans Saints camp report, Kendre Miller injured, Chase Young debut, some standouts, all the way from California at the New Orleans Saints training camp. Ladies and gentlemen, this is After Further Review. Matt Moscana. Let's go ahead and take a listen, shall we?
Thrilled, man. All throughout Saints training camp while they're in Irvine, our buddy Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints, is good enough to join us here for a Saints camp report. We'll do it daily all the way through August 16th. That is, unless Ross gets sick of us and says, hey, stop calling me, you jerk. Ross, how are you, man?
Stop calling me, you jerk. No, I'm just kidding. I'm great,
man. That was quick. God, dog.
Jeez, man. We didn't even get started.
Hey, this is so wild, man. You told me when we spoke yesterday, I didn't realize this. You went to school? You went to grad school in Irvine? Like, you went to school on that campus?
Wow, that's pretty wild. Small world. UC Irvine, one of my favorite college basketball teams to bet on because they're always late night. Get me out of a jam sometimes.
Yeah, man. Literally right across the street. So the Brent Event Center is on a street called Mesa Road. And right behind the Brent Event Center is where the two football fields are. Across that road is the Claire Trevor School of the Arts, which is where I hold my Master of Fine Arts Theater. It's from that very school, from right across the street. So it was cool. It was a nice little homecoming.
Wow.
There it is right there.
Go.
The picture's on Twitter or X if you want to go check it out. I guess you have to take the photo of it, right? I mean, if you're going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't tell anybody that I was coming into town, so that was kind of my way of letting everybody know, hey, I got them here.
Here. Hey, set the scene for us, man, for a very decidedly different scene for Saints training camp.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could not be more different. I mean, honestly. I mean, if you're thinking about the players, if you're thinking about the scheme, if you're thinking about the energy, if you're thinking about the strategy, if you're thinking about everything, I've said it once, I'll say it again. What we are seeing right now, both from a systematic, from a strategic, from a schematic, from all of that, we have not seen anything like this in 15 years. Since 2005, everything has been done the exact same way, whether it was with Drew Brees or whether it was without Drew Brees. We have held to pretty much the same plan, strategy, standards, all of that as Sean Payton. Whether it was Pete Carmichael and Dennis Allen or Sean Payton himself, the Saints have done the same thing for almost 2 decades. So not only do we have a whole new crop of players who are in position battles, who are trying to make a name for themselves, whether that's Talise Fuaga, whether that's Trevor Penning, whether that is Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, whether that's Cedric Wilson, whether that's Chase Young, whether that's Cam Jordan, they're all over the place. Whether that's Peyton Turner, Isaiah Foskey, I mean, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Ladies and gentlemen, the deal is, both on the roster and with the coaching staff, there is a lot of new. There is a lot of first time. There is a lot of, how's Clint Kubiak going to do this? There's a lot of, what's the new culture going to be? Because last season / this offseason is a cultural reset. There's no other way to look at it. You don't fire your entire offensive staff. You don't do all that, bring in outside voices, young outside voices. You don't do that from a totally different tree. You don't do that without saying, you know what, okay, we're closing the book on Peyton Brees. Let's start anew. And it's got to be energizing. But that's what we're seeing right now in Irvine, is a complete fresh start.
Very, very different. Everybody's going to kind of talk about the weather and things like that, which I do think is worth mentioning. It does allow this team to maybe work a little bit harder, push a little bit more than maybe they can in 90%.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have a training camp here. I mean, in New Orleans, if you had it at their facility in Metairie, you're talking about 95% humidity, thunderstorms every 2 hours. Go somewhere where it's clear, it's sunny, and get to it.
Humidity, 99% humidity, all those things.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that's really kind of interesting about this environment is that it's one that kind of takes away a lot of distraction for this team. There's none of the home life stuff. There's none of all those.
Yeah, same. You get to focus. Same deal as always with the training camp, where you're not going back to your family, you're not going back to your house, you're not going back to any of that. You're focusing. You're focusing on the camp. Little side note: I was in Salt Lake City last week, Utah, and it was 105 degrees or something like that, and with no humidity at all. And I'll tell you this: you always hear it's a dry heat. You always hear the humidity makes a difference, whatever. It was hot. Obviously, it's over 100 degrees, but it is totally different. I mean, I wasn't sweating at all. And there were certain times where I was like, it's actually kind of cool. It's actually it's almost like a springtime vibe. I mean, sometimes at some points it was absolutely hot. And I was in I wasn't in a bathing suit. I was in clothes. So I certainly could not have made that walk in New Orleans. So, I mean, it was a good reminder of just how serious that humidity is.
Things, not that there's anything negative about that stuff, but their focus is on football all the time, and you can certainly kind of feel it. I would say that the vibe, if you will, was very different. It was a focused vibe, and even in a practice where you can only do so much, the NFL's rules with the first practice and acclimation periods and things like that, you can kind of feel a little bit of the intensity, and that intensity comes from the environment, but I think that environment is also driven by the coaching staff. We saw and felt a lot of that intensity during OTAs and mini camps as well, so it's great to see that carry through all the way over here on the other side of the country.
Yeah, you got to remember these coaches are fresh. Kubiak, Janoko, a lot of these guys it's their first crack at this, so they're going to come into this hot. So they're not going to have that time period of just like, okay, we always do this. It's another year. Let's just kind of ramp up. They're going to hit the ground hard because they got to send a message. They have to create the foundation of like what their culture looks like, what their training camp looks like. Clint Kubiak is doing what he can do to get the offense not only set up, not only to where they can execute, but he's also getting it to where they trust him and they respect him, and part of that comes with hitting the ground running. So from the players to the coaches, I just feel like the energy is in the right place to start training camp.
What was the structure of practice like today, Ross?
So they started off with stretch, then they went into some individual drills. We got to see a little bit more in terms of maybe some new drills that were coming up. The running backs had a new drill to where they had sort of these red bars that you can run under. They had 3 of them lined up next to one another. The running back would start with the football, start running full speed towards those three gaps, and then 2 coaches would fill 2 of the gaps, and then the running back would have to kind of react and then burst through the other. So one of those kind of Dirk Foster things that's being brought in. It's always interesting to see what new things the coach brings in. So they went to those position drills to where they were kind of focusing on their own positions, and they went into kind of routes on air and things like that where they started to put things together. So they built it after walkthroughs with routes on air, and then they went 7-on-7 where you started to incorporate more of the offense, more of the defense, and then they eventually got up to team drills, interspersing some special teams in the midst of that. They only ran team drills twice for this one. Again, pretty light, not a lot of trying to push the ball downfield or anything like that, but that was kind of the structure in terms of how they did it. And everybody came together, met at the middle of the field while maybe some field goal kicks were going on and things like that, and then broke for the day.
At Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, X. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Saints. If you're not subscribed, I mean, you're talking about a daily Saints podcast, and the Saints are in camp. I mean, it's just make sure you're subscribed to that podcast right now. Since you were talking about the running back drill, let me ask you about Kamara. All indications are he seemed to do well on the day.
By the way, let me talk a little bit about the drills. So I don't put a lot of stock into the drills or the statistics from camp or anything like that. What I'm focused on is the energy. What I'm focused on is the competition. What I'm focused on is who is pushing themselves ahead of their position battle competition. I'm not worried about like blank player went through the right gaps in the running back, whatever drill, 100% of the time. Like, I don't care. I don't care about that. What I care about is who's leading, who's falling behind, who is looking good, who is physically fit, who is injured, things like that. So I wouldn't get too caught up in like the drills and all that. I think they're kind of like a vehicle for competition. Really, training camp is just kind of ramp up your CNS, ramp up everything to get to where you need to get ready for an NFL season.
When Kendre Miller got hurt, so maybe a thought on Kamara's day and Miller's injury?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the big thing around Alvin Kamara obviously was we were all very interested about what his participation would look like. He said
Let me say this about Kamara. I think everything is fine. The fact that he's there, the fact that he's doing things, it shows that he is a leader. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy when I see comments that are like, Alvin Kamara is just being a diva or he's just being a baby about this. And it's like, guys, in no walk of life should you do something when you feel like you do not have the best contract, you don't have the best pay, or you don't have the best situation around you. Like trying to better your situation or try and get something figured out that should be figured out. That it's not being a diva. That's not being a baby. That's being a businessman. That's being a human being. So if you're in a situation and you're like, man, I'm kind of getting screwed here with my hours. My schedule's jacking me up, or my pay should be higher, or I'm not getting overtime when I should be, or whatever, or anything like that. Take a little advice from your boy. It's not being a diva to get what you should get. And Alvin has mentioned he's not asking for the world. He just doesn't want to play on the last year of his contract with no contract extension, with nothing in the future, and no security at all. I mean, Alvin Kamara, again, is on the last year of his deal. If he goes out there, gets hurt, or if he goes out there in week 11, week 12, he has absolutely no security at all of where he'll be playing next year or any of that. As you can imagine, it's difficult for a player. So he is probably just asking for whatever, not the minimum, but he's asking for somewhere in the middle to where he knows he's a Saint, to where he knows at least the next couple of years, to where he can play kind of without that in his head. So I think it's big of him that he's there. I do not blame him for trying to get the most out of his situation. You take a look at some other teams like the Dallas Cowboys, some other teams where some legitimate turmoil is going on, where players are not there, where players are truly holding out, even Trent Williams in San Francisco. And it could be a lot different, So I'm glad Alvin's there, and tip of the cap to him.
To this contract negotiation with the team, but he was out there, participated in everything, individual drills, walkthroughs, full team drills, did it all. Didn't take any snaps off. He inherently had snaps off, but
Sure.
He wasn't standing off to the side watching things happen. And
he was there.
Fully
He was engaged.
invested, which makes sense, right? You're trying to push for a commitment with a team for your future.
And that 100%, like that's what we were saying last week when we talked about the contract thing, where it's like, he doesn't have that much leverage as far as his performance last couple of years. It doesn't help if he's not there. And then the fact that the Saints don't have to do anything, like the Saints already have him under contract. So this, I think, is the best move for him. It's just to be there, be present, be engaged. I guess have kind of the good faith that the front office will get this done. They should have enough of a relationship to where, whoever tells Kamara, like, look, we'll get this done. Just, do you, and then we'll kind of mess with the books or whatever. And Kamara should have full faith that they're going to do that. So I think it's the best case scenario that he is engaged, and as a fan, that's what you want to see, right? Like, we want to see this offense at full strength. We don't want to see this offense where, arguably the most important piece of it is holding out.
And that team wants to see what your commitment looks like, so let me show you. And I think that's logical. He said that it was always his intent to be here day one during training camp and participating. And then when we were speaking with him, I asked specifically when it comes to his contract negotiation, how things, is it something that you're looking at for the now, or is it something you're looking at with the future? And he's very much concerned about his future. He wants to finish as a Saint. He said, I want to retire here. I want to finish as a New Orleans Saint. So,
and I would have no problem with him doing that. I would have no problem with them allowing Alvin to retire as Saint, as long as his production is there, for sure. So, one of my favorite Saints of all time, and I hope they get this figured out.
Again, making that statement, and again driving the point forward that his goal is to remain a New Orleans Saint, and that's all that it is, that he's sort of looking for it. Now, does the value make sense to help to make that happen?
Right.
That's the question that the team has to answer.
Yeah, as much as we say that, 100%. The finances have to be there, and I'm sure they will.
And then I think you got another idea of the value when you have a guy that was drafted in the third round just a couple of years ago, in Kendre Miller, leaving with an injury. And unfortunately, this has just become all too common for Kendre Miller, to the point to where when I asked Dennis Allen about the injuries today, one of the things that he said was to the effect of, Kendre Miller is a guy that's effectively got to find a way, or figure out a way to stay healthy, because it's hard to make a football team when you're hurt.
This is a good reminder. I had a lot of people during this Kamara conversation tell me Kendre Miller can be he can be the running back. Kendre Miller can be the starting. He looked better at times last year. And let me just tell you this, you can never, ever just assume a player is going to, number one, play at the full season. But you also can't assume that a player can handle that workload. We've seen it. We kind of saw it with Tony Pollard last year, where Tony Pollard looked like he was ready to be the featured running back. And then you all of a sudden see, damn, he actually probably can't handle the full workload. We've seen that before. We've seen it with Cordero Patterson with the Falcons, where he would look incredible at the beginning of the season, and then all of a sudden it's like, you can kind of tell he's wearing down. He probably isn't that 200 carry a year kind of guy. People way too often, fans and analysts or whatever, they look at players and they just 1 + 1 = 2, where they think, okay, well, if we bench Alvin Kamara or release Alvin Kamara or trade Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller will step in, no problem. He'll have 180 carries, and then we'll times that by his yards per carry, and then boom, he has 1,400 yards. That doesn't happen. And people wear down, and Kendre Miller has yet to prove he can do not just play a season. He hasn't even proven he can play a quarter of a season. Again, he had 170 yards rushing last year. And the reason I say all this is to tell you to be careful whenever you say, make blank rookie the full-time starter, or make blank assistant coach the head coach. Clint Kubiak has yet to call a play for the New Orleans Saints. Let's pump the brakes on him being the head coach next year. Kendre Miller has yet to have 200 yards rushing. Let's pump the brakes on him being the featured back, right? Bub Means has yet to play a game. Let's pump the brakes on, could he be the number 3? Right. So and same with a lot of other players, Christian Boyd and whoever else, where you got to let these players develop before they're ready to just be the starting whatever position for an NFL team, and before they're ready to get that many reps. And I kind of said that with Rashid Shaheed going into this year, where people were saying, could he be our number 1? And it's like, ladies and gentlemen, let him try and be the number 2 first. Let's see what a little more volume looks like. Let's see what a little bit more touches look like. Let's see what a little bit more wrinkles in the offense. What does that look like? How does he transition from just a burner deep threat to more of a true number 2? Let's try and get there first. So same with Rattler, same with Haener, where I had tons of people telling me that Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener should be the quarterback this year. You can't just throw players in like that and completely skipping their development, or completely disregarding their variables, like Kendre Miller's unfortunate variable that he can't stay healthy.
And that was a very upfront remark by a head coach, coming out and saying it, effectively publicly challenging this player to find a way to stay out on the field. So we don't know the severity of the injury yet. We do know it is a hamstring injury, but so we'll be digging for more information there. But definitely something to watch, because man, if you want to prove that you're of value to this team, this was a real opportunity for you to do that. Now Alvin Kamara shows up, he's fully participating, and then you leave the field hurt again. That can be a little bit tough on your outlook.
Yeah, not good.
I heard the Dennis Allen's comment, Ross, when he said it's hard to make the team when you're injured. Is there really a chance that Kendre Miller doesn't make this roster?
I think, look, what we've seen over and
I think he's kind of just saying, if you're not healthy, you're not going to be on the roster, which is 100% correct. If you just spend your whole time injured, you're going to find yourself off of the roster. I don't care what position you're in.
Over again is that Dennis Allen loves to drive competition. And so when you love to drive competition, you have to have guys that you feel like can actually push. And one guy that I would keep an eye out on, especially after that comment, is Jordan Mims. Jordan Mims is a young, talented running back from Fresno State. He's got a little bit of that Fresno State connective tissue to a lot of this coaching staff, Derek Carr, Jake Haener, all this other stuff. But he's a guy that they really liked. Remember, they didn't bring him in as an undrafted free agent. He's somebody that signed as an undrafted free agent with the Buffalo Bills and then hit the market, and the Saints went out and got him. And then he stuck on the roster the entire time. And he loves this system, this Clint Kubiak system. Everything down from the run game.
That's the good thing, too, of the situation the Saints are in, when you have core veterans and then you have young backups or unproven backups or whatever. Every position is a position battle. I'm going to say this all training camp, but Rashid Shaheed to Cedric Wilson to Bub Means to A.T. Perry to Equinemius St. Brown to the offensive line to the defensive line with Peyton Turner, Isaiah Foskey, Carl Granderson, Chase Young, Cam Jordan, to the running backs, to the tight ends. Besides your top guy, once you go a layer down, it is a complete up for grabs of what that rotation looks like. I love that. I love the idea that we're just driving competition. May the best man win. The talent usually rises to the top, and if that means Jordan Mims is our backup running back and Kendre Miller's on the practice squad, so be it. If that means that Dalen Hooker is our starting tight end, and Foster Moreau is in the 15th row selling candied pecans, so be it. I don't care. And this is another thing where people get kind of mixed up, where I had it's like, what about blank player? I like blank player. It's like, I don't really care about blank player. Honestly, I could care less. I want the best player at that position. I don't buy players' jerseys. I don't like their numbers. Who is where does not matter to me. What matters to me is that the most impactful person at that position is playing. That's it. That's just how I see the game, and that is why I think this channel can give the analysis we give. Is that we don't have any bias. I don't have a favorite player. I don't have a favorite situation, or I'm not rooting for Spencer Rattler over Jake Haener. I'm not rooting for Chris Olave over Rashid Shaheed. I'm not rooting for Chase Young over Cam Jordan. I don't care. If Cam Jordan has 12 sacks, awesome. If Peyton Turner is Defensive Player of the Year and Chase Young never steps on the field, awesome. I'm not losing any sleep about it. And that's how I think everyone should look at this. I know I watch an insane amount of NFL coverage, and people get really hung up on like their favorite player or their favorite rookie or who they're invested in or whose jersey they bought or whatever. And it's like, I just want to see the Saints win games. That's it. I want to see the Saints win games. I want to see the Saints win the NFC South. I want to see us host a playoff game. That is where I draw the line. If Talise Fuaga is benched and random 37-year-old free agent we get is our starting left tackle, cool. Works for me. I hope we land on our draft picks. I hope these guys develop. I hope they become good. But if they don't, next man up. Give them the chance to develop. Give them the chance to play. And then next man up. Best player. Let the best player play. That's it. So that's what training camp is all about. I like that that's where the Saints are. I like that that's where the Saints are, seemingly where they're ready to just give the best player the chance to play. And I think that makes for a better team, honestly.
Same to lining up out wide, being motioned out wide, and being a part of the receiving progression. He loves every bit of it. And he's been healthy. We haven't seen any issues at all with him. And in some cases, you're just going to get better the more that you practice. And sometimes that ends up being the division, right? Like, I practice more, therefore I'm better, therefore I'm
yeah.
And you're not.
True.
Ross, we're going to have plenty of time to talk about the offensive line once they get into pads. I know you don't really see much before they get into pads, but I do want to ask you on the flip side about a defensive lineman. Chase Young, neck surgery was out there. What, if anything, can you tell us about Chase Young's first day in the black and gold?
Yeah, he's hard to miss. I'll say that much. He is big. He is somebody that is, it looks like an imposing force. We really only got the opportunity to see him during walkthroughs and then a little bit of individual drills, mostly kind of standing off.
Him doing all this? Whoa, this guy. This guy looks like he's ready to grab every sweet potato in every oven in America. Look at these mitts. But, the fact that Chase Young's out there, we knew that he was trending in the right direction. We already covered this. We knew that he was already working out, running. We never doubted that he'd be out there. But it's a good sign that he is out there moving around, just running, just moving the neck, feeling comfortable enough to do that. So great, trending in the absolute right direction here for Chase Young.
To the side, did a little bit of kind of special teams. It was around kind of the special teams area as well. But that's all that we really got to see of him. So I don't have any big insight on him yet outside of what he looks like physique-wise. He looks like a guy that's really ready to get started. So it was great to see him already out there, at least doing those walkthroughs and things like that, and we'll see what his ramp-up looks like in terms of how he gets more involved over time. Kool-Aid McKinstry back in mandatory minicamps, over the course of those 3 days, he went from walkthroughs to individual drills, from individual drills to more individual drills over the span of 3 days. And then today he was out there kind of participating. And so I'm wondering if maybe we see a similar trajectory for Chase Young, to where even just within the first week, do we get to see him advance a little bit?
Man, we're going to have a lot of time to cover a lot of ground here over Saints training camp. But the last one, if you had to put a finger on like day one standouts, anybody catch your eye or collectively catch the eye out there?
Yeah, absolutely. Linebackers, Demario Davis and Willie Gay. They were. I
think Willie Gay is going to be a stud. I really do. I think he's going to bring a level of athleticism to this defense, and I think he's going to be one of those guys who, at the end of the year, you're going to look back and say, like, damn, he might have been the best player on the defense.
Saying for a little bit, and I think many people have, that if this New Orleans Saints defense wants to get even better, right? This is a pretty consistent defense, I think is fair to say, since 2017. Consistently top 10.
Two things they need to do to get better: rush the passer, and they needed to get a little more athletic. Willie Gay covers the athletic side. Can we find that pass rush? If we can find that pass rush, there is no reason that the Saints can't have a top 5 defense.
And even though it used to be more in the top 5 conversation, but pretty good defense. And one of the things that I've been saying is that this team would be so much better if they were playmakers at the second level. And Demario Davis has been consistently one of the best linebackers in the league, obviously one of the biggest leaders in this defense. The addition of Willie Gay just takes the playmaking up an entire level.
Yep.
And so
100%.
that was something that really stood out to me. I'm looking forward to seeing if it was a day one thing versus a consistent thing, right? That's something that they've got to be able to show. But those are the guys that stood out to me in terms of the guys that I feel like had the best days out there. Saints training camp day one.
Make sure you're following him at Ross Jackson Nola, at Ross Jackson Nola. Subscribe to Locked On Saints.
Yeah, no doubt. Go follow Ross. He's out there. Training camp. Big shouts to all the New Orleans Saints media who are out there, who are doing training camp. It's tough, man. It's tough for them too. Be out there every single day, watching practice, reporting it. So big kudos to all those guys. So make sure you're following Ross if you want those second-to-second bits of training camp coverage. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.